Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Первая песня Srimad Bhagavatam, вторая
So Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1,
Божественное служение, текст.
Chapter 2, Divinity and Divine Service, text number 18. Karbhajana Prabhu, please read the Sanskrit version.
Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavatyuttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashta разрушена.
Nashta, destroyed.
Меня слышно?
Не слышно, звука нет.
So it seems like
интернет слабый.
there's some problem with the internet connection again, on the Gurudev side.
Nashta prayeshva bhadreshu nityam bhagavata sevaya bhagavatyuttama shloke bhaktir bhavati naishtiki. Nashta разрушена.
Nashta, destroyed. Prayeshu, almost to nil.
Abhadreshu,
Abhadreshu, all that is inauspicious. Nityam, regularly. Bhagavata, Srimad Bhagavatam, or the pure devotee. Sevaya, by serving. Bhagavati, unto the personality of Godhead. Uttama, transcendental. Shloke, prayers. Bhaktihi, loving service. Bhavati, comes into being. Naishtiki, irrevocable.
Karbhajana Prabhu, непреложное, это как ты можешь объяснить слово?
Karbhajana Prabhu, how can you explain this word? Irrevocable.
Твердое, постоянное.
Like firm, stable? Yes, probably yes. I don't come across this word too often in this context. In Sanskrit, it's something like nishtha, right? Naishtiki, like nishtha. So probably yes, something that becomes stable, irreplaceable probably, inevitable. In the literature translation, it says something that doesn't come back, something that is irreversible. Could we take a look at the English word right now? The English version?
Irrevocable. Irrevocable значит бесповоротный.
So in English it's irrevocable, it's irreversible. Something that doesn't go back, something that cannot be changed back. Okay, so now I'll read the translation of this text. So text 18, Divinity and Divine Service. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. So now let's read the purport. Here is the remedy for eliminating all inauspicious things within the heart, which are considered to be obstacles in the path of self-realization. Well, I think I'll take a pause over here. So what considers hard,
Что же там происходит?
what is it? And what's happening in there?
Что же может мешать в сердце человека?
What can be an obstacle in the heart of a person?
Помехи все как бы.
We can see that
Ну, мы видим помехи
there
во
are
внешнем мире.
a lot of obstacles in the external world.
Вся как бы, ну, разумная часть человечества устремлена, ну, на борьбу.
All the intelligent part of our humanity is actually fighting against
Меняем, ищем. Вот, пока
negative things.
человеческие в этом направлении все движутся.
So we've been in a constant movement all the time in order to improve our world, in order to improve our existence, the conditions of living, but we see that it's almost impossible to make it a better place for each and every one of them. So that's why we are forced to offer people everything they need. So at first the civilization was strictly Vedic. There was a Vedic culture, 4 principles. So we remember that there were no places where these 4 principles were actually broken. Drinking wine, having sexual affairs, gambling. There were no places like this. Based on Maharaj Parikshit's story. So all these things, they were forbidden. But with time, these things are given given free way more and more often. If you even forbid doing these things, people will start doing secretly. Some organizations, like shady organizations, are formed, and it becomes even more complicated to regulate all these social relationships. And you see, these things that used to be forbidden in the past now are getting allowed, like casinos, public houses, drug business. It exists. Everyone knows about it. Corruption exists. Everyone knows about it. So there's no such purity in families nowadays. Even in schools, it's not spoken about the truth. So then how do we deal with the aspirations of people? Most of the people, they are not ready to accept the truth. So it seems like we have to forbid preaching for the sake of all the humanity, otherwise it would be considered like a sect, like a cult. But the point is that we think that this is a new kind of a civilization, we can live in a different way. So this battle against the external world, it turns out we remove the laws of material world, starting from the subtle laws. So actually, we even start with the gross laws, and then we transfer to our morality, more subtle spheres, and then eventually we come across the sinful activity that, with help of the human culture, sometimes can be considered normal. So we allow things that hadn't been allowed before. So here it says there's a method that can take out all these obstacles from within the heart. Not from the world itself, but from the heart. Anything that is an obstacle, that is a hurdle in reaching the truth, should be removed. So now we have to understand what it is that is hidden in our hearts. Well, it seems like I don't have anything like that in my heart. No impediments. Maybe there's a lack of money, maybe some people. Perhaps if not these people, I would live a better life. If my salary were bigger, I would have a better life with these conditions. Even devotees, take a look, when they start practicing Hare Krishna, there are so many complaints come on the surface. So the spouses, they say, if not Hare Krishna, we would have a normal life. The same in Srimad Bhagavatam it says. So leave everything just the way it is. Don't change anything. Live where you are. It's just every time you meet someone, talk about Krishna. So this is a method of communicating with Bhagavatas. So it's in Italian font here. That means that it's important. So what a civilized person is supposed to think of, that wants to be civilized, of communicating with Bhagavatas. So here Bhagavata means Srimad Bhagavatam, or pure devotee. Two things. They are inseparable. On the spiritual level, there is no difference between them. So that's why Prabhupada gives us two terms, Srimad Bhagavatam. So here in the translation, thanks to a regular attendance of Srimad Bhagavatam's lectures. It says just Bhagavatam here, but the translation is Srimad Bhagavatam, or pure devotee. Sevaya, the service. So service begins with listening, Shravanam. That's the purification of heart, that's where it starts. Pure devotional service starts from here, as it is. If a person has a taste of associating with Bhagavatam, Srimad Bhagavatam, pure devotees, that's the beginning of a devotional service. That's the reason why we all have gathered here, because we have already started pure devotional service. This is something that inspires Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So out of all the questions that Ramandaraya has asked, the answer was, just by listening to Srimad Bhagavatam already has inspired you. So following Varnashrama dharma is also a good thing, or sacrificing the fruits of your activity, performing your dharma, these are all good things. These are all the path to the purification. Then Ramandaraya, is there anything else even better? And when Ramandaraya started talking about listening, that is above all these processes. Listening about the Supreme Personality of God, associating with Bhagavatam, or listening to Srimad Bhagavatam. So that's when Lord Chaitanya felt the wave of ecstasy. That was the first wave in their communication. This was the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam, full of ecstasy. Something that inspires Lord. So that's when you perform your duties, you work for your family, and Srimad Bhagavatam also mentions it. If everything that a person does, family work, all his dharma, his duties, if they do not take you, if they do not improve your taste for listening about God, this is just a useless activity. So human civilization should start with the listening of Srimad Bhagavatam. This is a spiritual platform as it is. And the rest, the preliminary ones, they just help the person out to alleviate to the platform of listening. So this is a very important detail, listening. If we are able to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, we would be able to hear a lot of other things. All the difficulties, obstacles are not hard just because people cannot listen to each other. They cannot hear each other. They haven't heard God. They haven't heard Srimad Bhagavatam. They haven't heard Holy Scriptures. They have never heard. Sometimes they did listen to all these things, but they couldn't hear them. Listening means perception, realizing. You can say that when an animal listens to that, it can hear it. Well, of course it can. It hears the sounds, but it cannot listen, cannot be focused on listening. Next stage is kirtanam, you can repeat. you can take it through your life. You can experience it. And then when smaranam comes, when you chant it with deep emotions, so the devotee's service becomes nashtiki, irrevocable, something that is irreversible, because it is already in the mind of a person. So it's in the depth of his consciousness. But it all starts out with listening to Bhagavatam. So there are two types of Bhagavatam, namely the book Bhagavata and the devotee Bhagavata. Both the Bhagavatas are competent remedies, and both of them, or either of them, can be good enough to eliminate the obstacles. All obstacles for listening. Only the answers adjust person to listening. So if an answer does not satisfy person, the person will not be listening, will stop listening. So sometimes we live just like that, without any satisfaction. That's why there's so irritation out there. Of course, this could be connected with many other things, like food in lower gunas, life on lower gunas. But today we are talking about the reason of all these lower gunas. How did we get associated with all of them? Because people, they have stopped listening, or they've lost it. That's why their communication, we live for communication. It only brings irritation. So only Bhagavatam can satisfy. So Karbajana Prabhu, do you know this verse from Srimad Bhagavatam by heart? Well, there are several verses, and there's one in Bhagavad Gita. So that means brings satisfaction, is that right? Yes. Only service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the one that you cannot see with your material eyes, and this service should be selfless, without following any benefits, and unstoppable. Then you get full satisfaction. So this detail is really, this text is really important. Because if you start a selfless devotional service, you cannot, if you hadn't heard about it in the first place, about the reason, the supreme reason. So that's why no one, without having heard about the supreme reason, is not even able to do that. There's some subtle form of sensual enjoyment as an exchange. So sometimes people, they just follow, different isms in their lives, and of course there are some disadvantages in there that spoil, that ruin the result of all these austerities. There were many altruists in the past, but all the results that they had reached, and there are still heroes in history, they're all corrupt. Because their followers, they use it in order to gratify their own senses. They waste these fruits of activities because they had never heard about God. They only use it for people, for themselves. Even the communists, they were working for the welfare of all the people, but everything got ruined because all these fruits were devoted to people. When you hear about Bhagavatam, about God, you cannot start pure devotional service, real selfless one that satisfies your soul, and there's only irritation and different forms of accusations. You see, people back in time, they had a lot of revolutions for the welfare of the future civilizations, future generations. Some of them said that I will die just for the next generations, and now we criticize all that. So here's the result. These people, they are refused these days. And Prabhupada says, even if you try for your family, well, not even for other people, but for your family, you dedicate yourself to your family will say, no, we're not satisfied. What have you done so special? So that's what Prabhupada says. That's how material nature works. If there's no supreme truth, you will never be able to satisfy either yours or your senses or the senses of other people. No matter how much you try, you will never satisfy your senses fully. There will also be irritation. All people are irritated in their relationships. They live together and they always feel irritation. And if a person is already irritated, maybe even he acts like an enemy. So there's also a duty. He lives just for the sake of a duty. But the point is that when he performs his duty, he gets specified. And in this specified condition, he might hear what he needs to hear. But the sense is that to hear Shravanam, to accept these things. The devotee Bhagavata is as good as the book Bhagavata, because the devotee Bhagavata leads his life in terms of the book Bhagavata, and the book Bhagavata is full of information about the personality of Godhead and his pure devotees, who are also Bhagavatas. Bhagavata book and person are identical. You have to understand it literally. What Prabhupada has said, Srimad Bhagavatam is a personality. Remember this example? When Prabhupada initiated his disciples, and his first disciples, they were learning everything from Srila Prabhupada personally. They didn't have any supervisors, mentors. That was the first generation of Prabhupada's disciples, so they accepted everything personally from Prabhupada. And when he was leaving them to some other centers to meet with neophytes, these first disciples, they felt that they didn't have this power to support this spiritual level. So when Prabhupada is around, everything was understandable, was clear. Ecstatic kirtanas, lectures, awakening lectures, prasadam, everything was clear. But every time Prabhupada leaves, everything becomes so difficult. So they said it to Prabhupada, they said, when you leave us, we feel your absence and there's like an emptiness. So we don't know what to do, how to act, how to even associate with each other. We could have some quarrels. And Prabhupada said, so install my murti and you will feel my presence. So chant Kirtanam in front of my murti, that's how you can concentrate on me, you can focus on me. So they got really surprised, but they have made this murti and they have felt the presence of Srila Prabhupada. And when they're following his instructions more and more, his presence felt more and more on a transcendental level. So here we have to understand it literally. So the book, Bhagavata book and the person are identical. Because by reading Srimad Bhagavatam, you become a pure devotee. Description of the personality of God, it's not different from God. On the spiritual level, image of Krishna, deity, name, and pastimes of Krishna, Krishna Katha, are not different from Krishna. The one describing these pastimes, he is also inseparable. Everything becomes absolute. And the hearers, they also become Bhagavatas. We know it because the atmosphere becomes transcendental. Yatma Suprasidati. You don't stop class Bhagavatam, you feel full satisfaction or almost full satisfaction. Almost all bad things go away. Unless you have this physical body, you will always have some thoughts of how to support it. You will never support.
Мы помним хорошо.
Whom you had
Но это нас
quarrel
не тревожит так, не доставляет нам
before
боль
listening
и
to
не
Srimad
отвлекает
Bhagavatam.
от главного. Потому что взаимоотношения
So when you
опасны
listen,
тем материальны,
it
что
does
они
not
именно уводят человека
distract
от
you
взаимоотношений
from the
с
main
Богом и с
things in
людьми.
your life.
Уводят, он бросает.
Just when you don't do it, you get distracted so much,
Если кто-то слишком
you are taken by
он
Maya.
Маю обязательно.
And if someone is
Но если он
offended
слушает Шримад
too much,
Бхагаватам,
he will go to Maya. But if he listens to Srimad Bhagavatam
то если
from
он это делает,
Bhagavata,
он
if
причисляется к
he
чистому
does that,
преданному, и его
he's
служение
considered to
становится
be a pure
непреложным,
devotee.
вечным.
His
Не уйдет.
service becomes
То есть вот это хороший
irrevocable.
момент, хороший признак, что если мы видим, что преданные собираются, и
There's a good
регулярно
sign.
слушают
If
Бхагаватам,
devotees get together
пока
and
мы
they
это
listen to
делаем,
Srimad
мы в
Bhagavatam,
безопасности.
while we do it, we are all
Мы в
safe.
безопасности, мы защищены вот Бхагаватой.
We are all protected
Или
by
Кришна
Bhagavatam.
Тхам, Твам, Саропа, Пепсио.
Or just like Krishna
Бхагаватам тебя
says,
защитит так,
Bhagavatam
что
will
тебя
protect
защитит,
you.
если ты это
The Holy Name will
слушаешь, если ты
protect you.
слушаешь, если ты
If you
общаешься,
practice,
ты
if you
ходишь,
listen, associate, you
ты
will be under
предаешься, ты
protection.
получаешь защиту.
You
Ты
are,
каждый день предаешься, каждый день получаешь
you devote
защиту.
yourself. If you do it every day, you'll be protected every day. If you do it constantly,
полностью всегда под защитой Бога.
you will always be protected fully.
Преданные Бхагавата, они посредственный представитель
The devotee Bhagavata is a direct
Бога.
representative of Bhagavan,
Поэтому
the personality of
доставляют
Godhead.
удовлетворение преданному
So by
Бхагавате.
pleasing the devotee
Можно обрести
Bhagavata,
то же
one
благо, которое
devotee
приносит
Bhagavata, one can
изучение
receive the
книги
benefit
Бхагавата.
of the book Bhagavata.
Человеческим разумом невозможно
Human reason
постичь,
fails to
каким
understand how by serving the devotee Bhagavata or the book Bhagavata,
можно постепенно продвигаться по пути
one
преданного
gets
служения.
gradual promotion on the path of
Но Шрила
devotion.
Нарада Дева
But
в
actually,
предыдущей жизни был сыном служанки.
these are facts explained by Srila Naradeva, who happened to be a
Его
maidservant's son in his previous
прислуживал
life.
мудрецам.
The
Таким
maidservant was
образом, он
engaged
тоже
in the
познакомился
menial service of the sages, and thus he also came into contact with
Ведь в
them.
самом Шримад Бхагаватам это
You see,
объясняется.
in Srimad Bhagavatam itself, it is
То есть
explained,
самодостаточное произведение.
it's
Если у нас
self-sufficient.
возникают вопросы, как это возможно,
If we have some questions of how it is impossible, how do we perceive this or that, Srimad Bhagavatam has all the explanation, not everywhere else.
Достаточно просто слушать Бхагавата.
So it's just enough to listen to Bhagavatam. You don't have to render to any other sources. So Bhagavad Gita is, of course, is on the same platform as well. So if you want to understand Bhagavad Gita, we have to find the answers in Bhagavad Gita itself, not by asking your neighbors. So people say, you know, I was just visited by a Krishna consciousness person. And we ask, like, do you know who Krishnaites are? You're asking your neighbor. So I was sad that his Krishna consciousness person, he was offering me some books, and I said, like, no, 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 I don't need your books. And then asking your neighbor would say, you know, some kind of a cult. So why didn't you ask this person himself? Well, because the person follows regulative principles. You can see it in his face. So these emotions, so 50% are off on his face of all these material things. It's not a person that you can ask someone just out of curiosity. He believes in these things. So this question will not offend him. He will just give you an answer based on his faith. So that's why people think, I'd rather ask this question to my neighbor. So that's why sometimes we don't ask sages. We ask, is he a sage? Yes, he's a sage. So yesterday he brought my vision back. He's a sage. So then I say, yes, okay. But we don't ask who sages are. We don't ask sages who they are. We don't ask them about God. So we are so strange. If you want to know about God, ask someone who serves God. As easy as it is. So The maidservant was engaged in the menial service of the sages, and thus he also came into contact with them. Simply by associating with them and accepting the remnants of foodstuff left by the sages, the son of the maidservant got the chance to become the great devotee and personality Srila Naradeva. So you see, he was just listening and he liked what they were talking about, although he couldn't understand everything. He heard, he liked it. It has led him, because in that atmosphere, he really wanted to taste the remnants of food left by them. So that's what he wanted, to taste the food of pure devotees. That's how his life got transformed. He got this taste. Association with Bhagavatams also include prasadam. Now sadhana, of course, is present. It's a compulsory thing. We have to spread it as well. And to understand these effects practically, it should be noted that by such sincere association of the Bhagavatas, one is sure to receive transcendental knowledge very easily. Sincere association with Bhagavatam. So Narada Muni, we're given his previous life, he lost interest to his childish games when he heard Bhagavatam. He felt fully satisfied. He totally forgot about his childish games. So this is called sincere listening to Srimad Bhagavatam. Every person chants mantra, but his mind is in hurry, so I have to finish up faster because I have a lot of things to do, and it happens constantly. That means he has to perform his duties, his material duties. That's the state of his mind. He has to work, support himself, try to be sincere and follow regulations and instructions of his own ashram, Grihastha ashram. And every person listens to a holy name, Srimad Bhagavatam, and feels that this is the perfection of life, and there's nothing to be added or taken away. Then he will get rid of all this, of all his duties. Krishna will free him from all these things, from all these material duties. So he would think, why do I even need to perform these material duties if they are all temporary, not attractive? They're always followed by some tribulations, some miseries. Just like when Maharaj, he thought the same way when he was offered to become the ruler of the kingdom, he said like, no, I don't want to do that. Why am I supposed to do that? I mean, there's no sense in that. So there was an exclusion. So Lord Brahma told him that it is a compulsory thing. You need to rule so that other living beings have some benevolence. You have to serve God because you're capable of it. You will not get offended, or you will not get, you will not dirt yourself. You will not be identified with it. You will be just serving to God. So that's what kind of ruler we need, just to fulfill your duty, just like Yudhishthira did. He couldn't enjoy his kingdom. You do it just to fulfill your duty. He was Paramahamsa, this Maharaj. So Krishna says, if I don't fulfill my duty, everything will get destroyed. So people should understand how they need to perform their duties. But the person thinks another way. This person should think another way. I chant mantra for Krishna. But a person chants thinking about his business, money, children, politics, my material existence. If he thinks about these things while chanting, it means that he cannot hear Bhagavatam yet. So he needs to work and sacrifice part of his fruits, and eventually he will have to hear Bhagavatam, receive this pure listening, pure hearing. Then you can consider him to be a liberated person, even if he still works. He just does it as an example, just by fulfilling his duties, but not for his own glory. So sincere association with Bhagavatam guarantees you the liberation. There's no doubt in it. And that he becomes fixed in the devotional service of the Lord. So he becomes independent. He'll be able to walk, to act in a devotional service, use his hands and legs and his senses, eyes, ears, nose, emotions. So he'll be able to engage all these things in his devotional service. The more progress is made in devotional service under the guidance of the Bhagavatams, the more one becomes fixed in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. So it's all pierced by many tastes. So this service, it's filled by ecstatic emotions, happiness, admiration of the personality of Godhead, admiration of Srimad Bhagavatam. There's a lot of this deep rasa in there, really juicy tastes. So you also have to be confirmed in it, not to speculate with these tastes. Do not sell them out to materialists, just for a good material benefit. So the messages of the book Bhagavata, therefore, have to be received from the devotee Bhagavata. And the combination of these two Bhagavatas will help the neophyte devotee to make progress on and on. An experienced devotee can read Bhagavatam and progress naturally. A neophyte should first hear about Bhagavatam from an experienced devotee, because reading Bhagavatam is a challenging thing if a person does not have any spiritual experience. You may not have any taste or even fall asleep when reading Bhagavatam. So that's why it's a combination of reading Bhagavatam, these are personal relationships with God. If we fall asleep while listening to Bhagavatam, these are our personal relationships. Of course, there are some interesting things that appeal to us, some things we do not understand. These are all our relationships with God. If we want to test our personal relationships with God, so you can understand that when reading Bhagavatam, how much those descriptions are interesting for me, something that is clear, not clear to me, somewhere where I fall asleep and when I wake up. So that's where my interest gets awakened. I have to contemplate. I have to take this thread and pull it out for myself, and I have to retell it to others, Shravanam Kirtanam. While doing this, you will understand things that you hadn't known, that you hadn't understood before. Bhagavatam will help you. So Bhagavatam acts as a person. Why? Because it's self-sufficient, it's full as a person, personality. Everything is in there. Senses, intelligence, mind, ahankara, pure soul and the super soul. It's a full set. Everything is in there. So everything is described in this way. Everything is connected and is laid out in a transcendental intelligence by Shukadeva Goswami and heard by the transcendental intelligence of Maharaj Parikshit. If this hadn't been told, we would say, it's just some kind of silly thing, it's not real, but it was perceived by Maharaj Parikshit. It was perceived by the sages, by all the previous acharyas. That's why this transcendental message of Bhagavatam, it's also perceived, and we examine it, read it the way it is perceived, and retold how our senses get spiritualized, our mind, our intelligence gets awakened, and then how our ahankara dissolves. All this comes with Srimad Bhagavatam. How do I even remove my false ego? It all comes from Bhagavatam. I receive all these things from this transcendental intelligence. How do I feel as a soul combined Satchitananda? And how do I hear the super soul? So this is called personality. There's no difference between personality of Bhagavatam and Srimad Bhagavatam, because it's a complete thing. This personality is complete, it's full. So this is all about personality and other personalities, many personalities, many complete personalities come into one person. If we say one full thing, we talk about personality. Personality is full, is complete, is whole. So you have to realize ourselves in a full extent, to the full extent. And in this way, this perfection is guaranteed just by listening to Srimad Bhagavatam, associating with the devotees. So these are a few words about on this text. So let me read the translation once again. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. So we will all dance and sing. We'll start our dance and we'll dance our way to Vrindavan. You cannot go back. You see, it says it's irrevocable, it's irreversible. You cannot take your senses away from it. So any questions or comments? Thank you, Chaitanya Chandra Charan Prabhu. Let us make a short announcement and then some questions. So, Pramananda Prabhu. Hare Krishna, thank you very much for such a great lecture. So, dear watchers on YouTube, send your questions to ajavaragya.com. For those who are on Zoom right now, raise your hands and turn your mics on. So I will just take a moment here and then I will give a word to someone else. So one detail seemed very interesting to me particularly. So you've concentrated on the first line of the purport where Srila Prabhupada says, purification of your heart. All the obstacles are removed in the path of self-realization. You've also said that people are trying to remove the external obstacles because we're all in different circumstances, difficult times. And when a person is oriented on senses gratification, being totally ignorant, trying to find the satisfaction on the material platform, then correspondingly he starts hating everything that is an obstacle to his happiness. And if
то сейчас такая тенденция
this process is continued, there's a tendency that
к тому, что мне
these
мешает
people
моему счастью
face something that
глубинное чувство того, что
is an obstacle to my happiness, and there's a
дозволено и
deep
недозволено.
feeling that there are things that are allowed and not allowed,
Счастье как раз
because people think that happiness is it's free,
получать все желаемое,
so they're free to get whatever they want,
а оказывается
everything I want, anything I want.
совесть.
But it turns out that deep down there's a
Что такое грех?
conscience, and they understand it, the notion of what is bad and what's good and what the sin is.
Вот они говорят, если бы не было бы, а в точности наоборот. Нужно очищать сердце, чтобы получить.
What is that we have to purify our heart to become free?
Ну так или иначе, такие мысли пришли, поскольку я видел
Now, either way, I
много
had
лет
these
назад люди
thoughts in my
снимали
head.
фильм,
So back in time, a few years ago, I watched a movie,
и
documentary movie about some
некоторые
experiments,
говорят,
some
психологическая
investigations.
проблема,
People said that the scholars that it's a psychological problem.
потому что
It
есть
stops
понятие
me
грех.
because there's a notion of a
Поскольку мы
sin,
выросли в той или иной
because we've all been
религиозной
raised
среде,
in this or that
христианстве,
religion,
мусульманстве,
either it's Christianity,
христианский мир.
right, or
И они говорят, что вот
mostly Christians, also Muslims, of course.
надо устранить
So we're all said that we have to remove
понятие греха.
the notion of a
Мы
sin.
будем счастливы.
That's when we'll be happy.
Конечно, другой есть метод, с помощью которого можно
There's
стать
also
счастливым,
another
счастливым,
method of
наоборот,
becoming happy.
соответствовать,
It says here that we have to correspond
идеалу человека.
to the ideal
Общаясь с
of a
Бхагаватами,
person
те, кто
by
посвящает
associating with
эти священные
Bhagavatas,
писания,
the ones who
общаясь с ними, очистить сердце. И таким образом ты
are
чувствуешь,
embodiments of all
естественно,
these holy
следовать
scriptures. When you purify your
зову
heart,
сердца,
you
естественно,
follow the call of your heart
испытывать
by
внутреннее
listening
счастье или служить Господу.
to Srimad Bhagavatam and serving to Lord Chaitanya,
Говорили, шли,
to Supreme Lord, I'm sorry. So I just wanted to share these couple of thoughts that I have. Yes, thank you. It's really deep. Yeah, I've been touched by it. Good message.
Ранга-деви, пожалуйста, включайте микрофон.
So Ranga Devi, please turn your microphone on. Hare Krishna, dear devotees, Chaitanya Chandra Charan, Prabhu, please accept my obeisances. Thank you so much for such a deep lecture. I'm very grateful to you. So there are many questions, but we'll just ask one. You said about selfless devotional service, and also about when a devotee fulfills his duties, he is satisfied. What are the internal and external signs of when he does it selflessly and when he does it, when he just fulfills his duties? When we just fulfill or perform our duties, the prescribed duties. It's not what he thinks his duties are, but just the prescribed duties. You know, just every Saturday, go and drink some alcohol. Prescribed duties. I'm talking about prescribed duties. This person becomes sattvic, peaceful, balanced, clearly thinking, kind. If he performs his duty, he gets sattvic qualities to hear, to understand people, to hear holy scriptures, just with help of performing his duties, he gets predisposed to hearing holy scriptures. So I underline that these are the prescribed duties. Sometimes it happens that people perform the professional duties, but they only build up some irritation, dissatisfaction, because these duties are not prescribed for them. Job that is useless, just for the money. So this person is just used like a milk cow. And of course, this person will be unsatisfied in every sphere of his life, because it's not prescribed to work only for the money. You also have to think about the benefit of it. These duties have to be prescribed. But when a person performs his selfless service, he will not only be satisfied but also happy, spiritualized. He'll be able to think, to contemplate about God. He's given this ability to think about Krishna with his mind, and we see this person feels happiness with no reason. There's no reason. He may have a very simple life, an ordinary life. He's got a family, some difficulties, but this person is happy, he's glad, he's joyous, because deep down in his heart, he's got super soul that is actually dissipating all these difficulties. So that's the difference. Prescribed duties, they elevate person on a platform of sattva, but a devotional service is even higher. Okay, next question, please. Hare Krishna, my obeisances. So thank you so much, Chaitanya Chandra Maharaj. So this topic that we have touched upon today, Srimad Bhagavatam, so this is the level of Nishtha, or even further. So we first have to achieve that level, because we are not conscious enough on this stage. So you have to grow. So now you've also reached Nishtha already, because you've attended all Bhagavatam classes. You're already Nishtha. You're attending these lectures on a stable level. So when I was taking an exam, so only you know what level you are. So you don't understand, I was at Sadhu Sangha, it was 4 years ago. But anyways, I cannot be so much advanced here. Now, in my eyes, you are a pure devotee. And that's it. Probably see everyone, the pure devotee. Of course, everyone that listens to Srimad Bhagavatam, that's the beginning of a pure devotional service. That's what Lord Chaitanya says. But you might think of yourself in a different way. That's your business. But this is level of Nishtha, right? It was the level of Nishtha. It becomes this. It becomes so firm and stable and joyous. Nishtha means you're starting your new life from this level. Before Nishtha, there's Kanishta and Nishtha. These are two different lives, two different worlds of relationships. Kanishta is the materialistic devotee, making some offenses, sometimes aggressive. But Nishtha is another life. You start being friends with devotees, you appreciate them very much, you value them very much. This is the level of Nishtha. You treat everyone, deep down in your heart, very favorably, very intimately. But you are friendly with every devotee. This is the level of Nishtha.
Пожалуйста, не злоупотребляйте.
Rageshwari Mataji,
Очень много вопросов в понятых рук.
please use your time wisely.
Я...
Чуть-чуть. Можно вот... Вчера я хотела задать вот...
Рагешвари Матаджи, вопросы мы задаем, связанные с текстом и лекцией.
So remember, we ask questions connected with this text.
Можно?
Да я ничего не могу поделать. Давайте еще раз задавайте.
Спасибо большое. Спасибо большое. Вот,
So
знаете,
please
вот
ask
как
your
поменять
question.
вектор? Вот
So how do I change the vector?
больше углубляться в духовное, вот все равно ум как-то отвлекается.
So go deeper into the
Хочет,
spiritual things.
я
Anyways,
понимаю,
my
что
mind gets
сидишь на
distracted.
лошади, ее нельзя
So
сильно
understand that
натянуть,
sitting on
нельзя
a
сильно
horse and you
расслабить,
cannot,
она
you know,
такая
pull the
вот
harnesses too
идет
much or too weak.
вот как вот
So where's
вектор этот поменять,
the
чтобы
balance?
больше
How do I
духовности
change this
было,
vector?
чтобы
So I
ум не
direct myself
занимался
more into the
вот
spiritual
глупостью.
things so my mind does not
Просто
get
у многих
distracted.
преданных такая есть беда.
I think a lot of devotees have the same problem. So when a person is riding a horse, that's a good comparison with your mind. So there are two variants. A beginning level person, when he starts riding a horse, he thinks about the horse. How will it behave? How to control it? What it feels? What if it pushes me over? And he feels unconfident. And the horse feels the same way actually. But when an experienced rider rides a horse, he does not think about the horse. He thinks of where to go. And the horse just goes there. You understand my question? My answer, I'm sorry.
Раджамани Прабhu, пожалуйста.
Sarajamani Prabhu.
Харе Кришна, примите мои поклоны.
Hare Krishna, please accept my obeisances.
Вы просили найти стих
So you've asked me to find a verse about Sanamanasu.
Нам сразу нельзя включать. Я вот его нашел. Это
So I
20 стих.
couldn't turn my microphone back then, but I've just found this verse.
Бхагават Бхакти Йогатах Бхагаватат Вигьяна Мукта Сангасе Джаяте. То есть прасана манасо.
So Prasana Manasu means
Прасад ума. Как-то давно вы
this
сказали.
the prasadam for mind.
Какое-то время назад.
You've recently said this phrase, I've
Вот
heard
и
it,
также упомянули, что
and also you have
беседу с Раманандараем,
mentioned
и там
this
он предложил
conversation with Ramanda Raya.
совершенства.
He offered some variants of perfection, starting from Varnashama, and also in the 16th and 17th chapters of the first canto, where Parikshit means Kali, cow, and bull, and it says there that dharma is actually about 4 regulative principles. And is it a correct way of thinking that I can compare these prescribed duties, that I can perform them based on these 4 principles, the mercy, truthfulness, austerities, and expanding these principles, a person actually develops his sense of duty, selflessness, so you can fulfill your prescribed duties in a way that will lead you to the absolute truth. Well, basically, at this level, when we converse with other devotees, we don't talk much about this idea. So we don't touch upon this topic. I just watch my daughter and she's growing, and I tell her, don't shut the door in such a loud way, associate with senior devotees to this and that. But I don't talk to her about these higher matters. So how do we do it when we associate with other devotees? How do we touch upon these topics? It's a good topic of our ethics, our culture of advancing Hare Krishna movement. So that's what we all have to work on, seriously. It's not only my understanding, I think Swami Maharaja also talks about it. He organizes special courses for the leaders. So the ethics is discussed on a deep level. Keshav Maharaj started the seminars for the leaders. I've already listened to one of the lectures. And now you are asking about the same thing. So probably you feel the same. When we talk about dharma, Sanatana dharma, some other dharma, all these are good things. Right now you've started speaking about things that dharma should be based on. Maybe we just miss something. We miss some things that dharma should be based on. A person can say that according to my nature I'm a liar. That's my nature. We're all liars, right? According to our nature. This is our dharma. So nature means dharma also, right? This is our essence. Lust, or lie, mistakes, deception. This is our deception. This is our dharma in Kali Yuga. This is the essence of a person in Kali Yuga. But what you have said us about dharma, when the bull is standing on 4 legs, right, these 4 principles, that's where dharma is coming from. This is the basis of dharma. And in the age of Kali, we all start with truthfulness. We have to develop this quality, being sincere, being truthful, and then all the rest of the things, like not slapping the door, or like washing dishes after you've eaten some prasadam, make your bed in time, clean your place, change your clothes, some mundane things. They have to be on a serious platform. So that's when people will treat all these things seriously. If we separate this platform from our daily things that we do, daily life, so eventually we can forget about our dharma. So there was one priest that visited us a long time ago, so he was asked to give a lecture. So he gave us a lecture, good lecture, balanced. He wasn't talking about God, he was just talking about people degrading. He said that it all started out with what a person stopped shaving, then he stopped mopping the floors, and then of course his philosophy started changing, his attitude. Why? Because he had lost his dharma. Well, he has stopped mopping the floors, so he doubted in some things, some important thing. So he got frustrated and he has lost interest in some simple things. So that happens a lot with people. They start smoking, this and that, because they have forgotten what that dharma is. They have faced some lies, some deception. When they did it, they didn't pay attention to that, but when they faced it, when it was done with them, they felt it. They got frustrated. So we have to teach people not only to follow the dharma, because this question is really blurry, but the basis of dharma, so there are no doubts. And it all starts out with satyam, being truthful. You have to explain people what the truth is, being sincere, truthfulness. You have to explain them how to restore our ethics, religion, morality, and pureness. So Prabhupada gives us this direction, internal and external purity. So we have to expand these notions. What the truthfulness is, most of the people that don't even know what it is. So until we say about the absolute truth, we don't know what truth is. Then remember, the devil is in details. Slapping the doors or dirty floors. The devil is in there. And he also cites the absolute truth. I don't know if I answered your question. Yes, I'm also thinking in this direction. Truthfulness, the basic principle, like no gambling. You see, we don't gamble, but there's a lot of some small lie. It's in every step we take. Even when we associate with each other, right away people they reverse your words. they change words. It's happening right now. Most of the people, they cannot communicate with each other. They reverse, they change words that the person might not even have said. Terminology is already different, words are different. I was just thinking in this direction. I just wanted to understand how I was thinking, if I was thinking correctly. So thank you for supporting me. Thank you for your answer. Namadara Priya. Hare Krishna. Thank you so much for the lecture. Chaitanya Charan Prabhu, I just wanted to ask you about how do I develop the taste for Srimad Bhagavatam in children? So we are organizing some children program. We do a lot of activities, but to tell you the truth, I doubt a lot about developing this habit for online education. Just in the perfect case scenario, it should be all done within families. Just I have this idea of maybe it's more important to dedicate some time to give this support to parents, mothers especially, so that they practice it within families. So I just wanted to know your recommendations of how to do it, and if there are any sense in having these affairs with children online. Just like always, you've answered this question. You've asked this question. You've answered it yourself. Of course, it's more important to do it within families. So the mission is, what does it mean to hear Bhagavatam for children? For anyone, your task is to give Bhagavatam to listening people. They have to feel what is written there. That's the point. You have to discover this for them, so they have this feeling. Think about this. That's when it will be interesting to listen to Bhagavatam. Children, of course, they will feel it. With the help of the game, they will be just delighted. Also adults, of course, partially through game, partially through some serious things. Women, they all feel through family relationships, through maternity. Yes, you can do this thing as well. Give them an understanding of what Srimad Bhagavatam is. People feel some family relationships. Bhagavata, Mahabharata, they'll have these things. Just give them this feeling, this sense. Uncover this for them. So these are their recommendations. And of course, if family reads Bhagavatam, that's easier. Give it to your son or daughter. Or when spouses communicate with each other, it's not like I'm a representative of God and just listen to me. I have to feel it. You're not a representative of God. I don't feel you to be in this role. That's what a wife can feel. Thank you so much. You've already answered my second question. Hare Krishna, dear Guru, please accept my obeisances, all devotees. Thank you for accepting me in your Sangha. So in the very beginning of this lecture, I was really shattered by the words that when you listen, you have to take all this information through your heart. So then I have a question. The obstacles that I have in the path of listening, not only so the obstacles that I have when listening, so what are the things that really are like impediments and things that help me to listen to Srimad Bhagavatam. What are these things? So the habit, we already have this practice of listening, so we have a habit of listening, whom to listen to and whom not to listen to. So just someone I want to listen to, someone I don't, it's just a habit. And that's what can prevent you. So when we listen to Srimad Bhagavatam, we just do it by habit, according to my habit. Well, hold on a second, I think that I'll go, oh gosh, that's the Holy Scripture. It's not just an ordinary listening, so I have to accept it fully with trust. And I have a habit of listening to something carefully and cautiously. But here, Acharyas, and the status is different. We have to open up our heart. So that's why my habit makes me very cautious. But when I've already heard Bhagavatam and it's gotten into my heart, some line, some verse, some notion, it's gotten into my heart. So that's when it becomes a filter, the basis to filter material sounds. It's very important. Because you have to ignore sounds from ignorance and from passion. And you only should receive sounds from the righteous things, from the mode of goodness. When we get this example of Bhagavatam, we will start understanding things in a pure way, in a clear way. I should look at everything through Bhagavatam. What to accept, what not to accept in this world, how to treat things differently. But you have to listen, you have to hear Bhagavatam with your heart. Thank you so much. Yeah, there's some food for thought. So, Pramananda Prabhu, questions from YouTube.
Харе Кришна, первый вопрос. Матаджа Татьяна.
So, first question.
Мой муж занимается санкиртаной. Однажды подошел
My husband is engaged in Sankirtanam, so once he approached a lady and he wanted to give her Bhagavad Gita, she said that, you know, everything is bad, we're gonna die very soon, so he didn't know what to tell her. So what am I supposed to tell to such a person to get her interested? Well, we have to agree with this person. That's the way it is. So there is a problem, I agree with you. I also think about that and I worry a lot. You know what pacifies me? The soul is eternal, it doesn't die, there's a spiritual world. So take this book and read about the spiritual world. Something, you know, in this direction. So the book, when life origins from life, maybe there's another book. So Satsrupa Das Maharaj, in his book, he gives us a story that sometimes people have this understanding or an image, a frightening image, because Bhagavad Gita says about death and birth and diseases and inevitability of all these things. And they have this opinion that these books, they call to renounce this world. Then Satsvarupa Das Maharaj says that, matter of fact, when we denounce the eternity of soul and also the possibility of finishing all this cycle of rebirth, we just, you know, go with the flow unconsciously, and we do not know how to solve this problem. Especially here, we actually denounce the world and life itself. So you can say that, yes, the life is temporary, but you have to think about the eternal life. Shri Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Мои поклоны.
Hare Krishna. My obeisances. Chaitanya Chandra Charan Prabhu. Krabhajana Prabhu.
У меня такой вопрос. Может быть, даже он возникнет из недопонимания.
So I have a question.
Шрила Прабхупада утверждает, что
Srila Prabhupada says that
тысячи, миллионы звезд.
the moon is better than thousands of
Есть
stars.
утверждение Srimad Bhagavatam,
There's a
что
statement in Srimad Bhagavatam.
оно предназначено для Парамахамс.
So it's all for Paramahams.
Вот, как бы в продолжении
Paramahamsas.
вопроса моего
So following the previous question,
понимание, что
there's like a misunderstanding.
означает ли это, что для нас преждевременно изучать Srimad Bhagavatam?
So maybe for us it's too soon to learn Srimad Bhagavatam.
Парамахамс.
We are not Paramahamsas, I'm sorry.
То же самое Прабхупада сказал про
So the same thing Prabhupada said about Vrindavan Dhama to his disciples.
в Вриндаване уже.
He says when he was in
В
Vrindavana,
Вриндаване могут жить только Парамахамсы.
he says that only Paramahamsas can live in Vrindavana.
Прабхупада,
But his disciples said,
это
Prabhupada,
означает, что
that
нужно
means that
уехать из Вриндавана.
we have to be out of Vrindavan.
Мы же не Парамахамсы.
We have to leave Vrindavan. We are not Paramahamsas.
Прабхупада сказал, нет,
Paramahamsas.
это
Prabhupada
означает, что
said
вы должны
no.
стать Парамахамсами.
This means that you have to
Это
become
означает, что книга
Paramahamsas.
предназначена для
This means
Парамахамсов,
that this
также
book
означает
is
это.
dedicated
Те,
to
кто хочет
Paramahamsas.
стать Парамахамсом,
And for those who want to become
кто в процессе
Paramahamsas,
находится также, впечатляется
who are
как
in a
в
process,
категории. Есть врачи,
they're
есть
also
студенты,
considered to
да?
be in this
Но они
category.
в одном заведении работают.
So they're doctors and then
Врачи
students.
обучают студентов.
You know,
Это
they
уже
work
одно
in one
заведение,
building.
всё. Не все
Doctors,
врачи уже
they
сидят.
teach. The students,
Также
they all
есть
live in one
те, кто
building.
серьезно относится к Бхагаватам,
So the ones who treat Bhagavatam in a serious way,
становятся на путь
they want to be on
Парамахамсов.
this, they want to take to this path,
Прабхупада сказал,
they are from the same category. So Prabhupada said, become
Откуда он говорит,
Paramahamsas.
что одна луна?
ну, Луна, да, она.
Why does he say that moon is better?
И он говорил, что я достигну успеха, если хотя бы
He
одного
said that I would reach,
А это
that I would be
другое.
successful if I
Это
make
редко.
even one disciple
Это
a
редко
devotee.
достигается, редко.
Wow, that's another thing. It's all attainable
Стать
very
Парамахамсой
rarely.
это
To become Paramahamsa is a rare thing.
Поэтому возникает вопрос.
So that's why I have a question. Maybe it's way too preliminary for us to learn Srimad Bhagavatam.
одну жизнь, но мы всё равно
Well, you can be doing it for many lives. You are in the process.
Можно
может быть, в
добавить?
этой жизни не получится стать Парамахамсой у меня, я не знаю.
I don't know if I
Я
can
думаю,
become
что я не
Paramahamsa.
стану Парамахамсой.
I think that I don't become Paramahamsa. I don't have enough time. I will not have enough time, but I'm still in this process.
Но кто-то станет Парамахамсой. Кто-то
But
уже
someone will
занимается
become Paramahamsa.
этим.
Someone is already
Душа
stepping,
сама изначально
moving along this path.
чиста и Парамахамса.
So, initially,
И вот мы
it's pure, it's Paramahamsa. So we are conditioned here,
находится на разных степени, на разной степени.
and this happens on different
Тому, чтобы
levels,
родиться
different
как
degrees.
Парамахамса, как
But the
душа,
point is that we have to
это процесс.
be reborn as Paramahamsa,
И
as a
процесс
soul.
начинается
This is a
с
process of bhakti. It all starts out with Shravanam Kirtanam.
Сегодня читал
In the previous verse that Chaitanya Chandra Charan Prabhu has read today, it says
Да,
that
она предназначена для Парамахамс.
Yes,
Чтобы делать Парамахамс,
it's all
а не
prescribed for Paramahamsas, not for
говорится, что
Paramahamsas, not for the persons that are already Paramahamsas, but for the ones who want to become
Кришна есть
Paramahamsas.
немного Параматма, сверхдуша, в сердце каждого, и благодетель честного
So Paramatma is in the heart of everyone. It purifies your heart,
преданного от стремления к материальным наслаждениям,
purifies the heart of a devotee
развивается потребность
from aspiring this
который добродетель
material
в себе есть их
senses
правильно
gratification.
слушает и повторяет.
And if you do everything correctly, you will become Paramahamsa eventually.
Бхакти означает одновременно и
So
процесс,
bhakti means simultaneously process
как
and
ты можешь
result.
стать Парамахамсом, как ты можешь
an
стать
aim.
Луной,
How can you become moon? How can you become
если ты не
Paramahamsa
встаёшь на этот путь?
if you do not take to this
В этой
path?
жизни
Maybe not in this life,
ничего не теряется, Кришна говорит
but
Бхагаватам.
nothing is lost, as Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita.
Вот этот пример, который
But at the same time,
Чандра Чаран Прабху привел,
this example given today from Narada Muni.
Парамахамса. Он был маленький
So he wasn't Paramahamsa, he was a little boy,
и занимался тем, что служил
So he was just serving to sages,
и вкушал остатки их просада.
sometimes eating remnants and prasadam from them. But anyways, he has reached this perfection in just one life. This is an amazing example.
Да, давайте в этой жизни как-то
Yeah, so let's
посвятим эту жизнь.
dedicate this life to Krishna's consciousness. We also have this
При помощи
chance.
Srimad Bhagavatam, да, это
With the help of Srimad Bhagavatam,
тоже есть шанс.
it gives us this
Есть еще
opportunity,
другая
this chance.
точка зрения,
And there's
с
also
позиции
another
читания
point of view,
Чайтамриты, там, с позиции Бхагаватам,
on
что
the
рассуждали, да, что
point of view of
просто,
Chaitanya Charan,
с позиции милости Господа читания все же еще
from
более
the
доступно
position of
становится.
Lord Chaitanya's
Потому
mercy,
что
everything
Господь
becomes
Чайтанья
even more
сказал, каждому
accessible.
стань гуру.
Lord Chaitanya
Если ты
said,
знаешь науку о Кришне,
everyone
ты
should
теперь,
become
кем
guru.
бы ты ни был.
If you know about Krishna,
Парамахамса ты не
you have to become
Парамахамса,
guru.
если ты
Doesn't matter
Шудра,
who you are,
саньяси,
Paramahamsa, Shudra,
Брахман,
Sannyasi, or
неважно кто,
Brahman.
если ты знаешь
Doesn't
науку о
matter who you
Кришне,
are.
ты знаешь,
If you
что
know the
Господь
signs
приводит
of
в воспевание
Krishna,
Святого
you
имени,
know that the essence of
добрая
all
луна на
days
небосводе
is
для
chanting
кого-то,
holy name,
ты уже
then there's
говоришь
moon
высшую
in the
истину.
sky for you. You
Это наука
already
читания должна.
speak about the
Вот
highest
поэтому на этой
truth.
милости наше движение
So
развивается.
that's
Не
why
потому, что мы
our
Парамахамса,
movement
потому что Господь
is
Чайтанья нас
being
сделал духовными учителями.
progressing on His mercy.
Проповедуйте, пожалуйста.
Thanks to His mercy,
Читайте.
preach, please, and read.
Также в этом стихе, который я процитировал только что, предыдущий стихи, там говорится, если правильно слушаю и
And
повторяю.
also, in the verse that I've cited,
Еще в предыдущем стихе там
if you
говорится,
listen correctly and repeat correctly,
когда мы служим,
when we
всем
serve,
всем
it says there,
служим великим душам или
if we,
личностям
when we
Бога,
serve to
тогда
great
восходим
souls,
к Адхаручихи, тогда
then
приходит вкус. То есть
then the
правильно
taste
слушать, не
comes.
просто слушать,
You
а
don't just
еще
listen,
служить.
you'll have to also serve.
Это секреты, каким образом мы можем
These are the secrets of how we can
почувствовать этот вкус к посланию.
get a feeling of this taste.
Чайтanya Chandra Прабhu, по-моему, нет, Браджамани Прабhu, да, упомянул, что
So Vrajamani Prabhu has also mentioned that Ramananda Rai,
упоминали сегодня,
or maybe you've mentioned it today,
Рамананда Рай начал предлагать различные пути самосознания, которые описывают.
so Ramananda Rai, he has started offering different ways of how to attain this perfection.
Есть еще у тебя,
He said that go further, there's something else that you can say. And when Chaitanya Ramananda Rai has said this verse,
этот стих произнес Господь Брахма.
so Brahma says the same verse.
Если
He
человек,
says
не
that
меняя ничего,
if a person, without changing anything, go anywhere or renounce this world,
оставаясь там, где он есть, потому что
just
мы так
staying
занимаем
wherever he
такое
is,
положение в социуме.
because this way or another,
Работает семьянин,
we have some
есть природа,
place in this
природа
society,
полезным трудом для социума.
we have some activities, have families. So Brahma says, you don't have to change anything.
Вести свою жизнь.
You just have
Общение с
to
преданными, приглашать
bring
к себе
association with devotees into your life, inviting them to your
которые
home,
исходят из их уст.
and worship the instructions that they give you.
Слушать и поклоняться телу.
Listen and worship with body,
Тогда
mind, and speech.
Брахма говорит,
And then Brahma says, this person
покоряет того, кто невозможно покорить,
will conquer
победить
something
непобедимого.
that cannot be conquered. By definition, Krishna.
Это Шримад Бхагаватам, это послание не просто такое вот.
So this message in Srimad Bhagavatam, it has so many aspects. It's very practical. Varnashrama is described there, Siddharma, everything is described there. Stories. Based on stories, it is shown how a living person can get elevated. Even Ajamila, look at his story. He was a sinner, but then he got liberated in the end of his life.
Мощный очищающий фактор. Даже если вы
See, it
не
brings
понимаете, просто слушаете.
So much information, such a purificatory factor. Even if you don't understand anything, just listen. Associate with devotees, worship, and this really purifies your heart. Who can tell you the way your heart is purified? If you don't make any offenses and you just listen to what they say sincerely. So once I was giving a lecture. So there was a Hindu in the temple, and I already started giving this lecture in Russian, of course. And I started worrying, there's a guest. Let me ask him if he understands Russian. Because I felt a little bit uncomfortable. So he was standing there for 15 minutes, and then I thought to myself, I had some doubts, let me ask him. So I asked him. So I said hi to him in English. And then I asked him, do you understand any Russian? He said, no. And then I asked him, so why are you sitting over here? How can you understand me? He said, no, I'm just listening to the sound. And that's enough. This purifying sound, I was so surprised. I was astounded. So when you just associate with devotees, it's already a purifying factor. You don't have to miss out on that. You're not supposed to miss out on that. So every line and every letter we have to find some practical application. If you can't do that, you just listen to that with your open heart. Because Srimad Bhagavatam is not different from Krishna himself. Thank you, Karabhajana Prabhu, so much. So you have very many questions in YouTube. So Chaitanya Chandra Prabhu, hold on. Hare Krishna, please accept my obeisances. I will have a very provocative question. Yesterday I tried it out during the program, so I didn't get an answer about dharma and the free will, the free choice. So Robert Oppenheimer, the inventor of the atomic bomb, so he had a choice to create this bomb as a political order or refuse it. So after he had seen what this bomb had done and the consequences, he has become an oppositioner, of course. He was against this nuclear energetics. So he was actually reading Bhagavad Gita since his childhood. So did he do the right thing? So if you put him in the role of Arjuna, so he actually probably neglected Krishna's instructions. So here's your duty, go and fight, and you cannot kill. You cannot destroy soul. You can only change the skin. So probably he neglected Krishna's instructions. So he's become the oppositioner of this nuclear weapon, and he has saved a lot of people, a lot of lives by just refusing this contract. What can you say? So the question is, so I just probably wanted to justify some people. I always want to see just good things, or at least something good initially, in initial intentions of a person, when a person wants to do this or that. So Robert Oppenheimer, has he done the right thing when he stopped elaborating on that nuclear bomb, atomic bomb? Or it was wrong, according to Krishna's instructions given to Arjuna, like fight because the soul cannot be destroyed. So you didn't formulate the question quite clearly, but I'll try to answer from what I've understood. The notion of dharma in the age of Kali is not applicable. That's why you have this doubt. So a person might have some good motives, every person. We try to look at the good things first, but in the age of Kali it is described as an ocean of sin. That means that everything is pierced with disadvantages, with weaknesses. All the good tendencies of a person, everything is not right. Everything is contaminated. Even when a person starts doing something good, but it all can get contaminated. This nuclear energy, of course, this is all dangerous initially. But before these people, they were doing the same things. Probably wasn't just so dangerous. You see, they were inventing weapons right until they faced the understanding that the whole world could be destroyed. So that's the way that we're taking. We could destroy the whole world. That's the point. So how did it happen? Well, because we have been reaching it for so many centuries, because Kali Yuga is so contaminated. In the age of Kali, there's only one pure way, not contaminated, the name of God. So this inventor, he didn't know about that. So probably he stopped doing this. He stopped this country. He terminated it, but even he has done it, it hasn't changed anything. The question is, what he was doing after that. Could he take people on the other level? No, he couldn't. He didn't have this level. The point is that he has done it. Kali Yuga has exploited him already. He has already been deceived by Kali Yuga. Even if he had taken to God, he could have probably neutralized this karma that he has implemented. In the age of Kali, you cannot find any pure process, either religion or economics, personal life, everything is contaminated. If you read Mahabharata or Ramayana, where the society was not contaminated yet, everything was clear and understandable, you'll see a huge difference with this time. So only the chanting of holy names could save it in this age. Not harma, but sanatana harma, eternal activity of a soul. The rest of dharma is contaminated. So thank you so much. So we'll try to select the questions related to the topic.
Продолжение к вопросу. Вишал Кришна Прабху. Как поймать грань между смиренным принятием ситуации
Sarve understands
волевыми решительными усилиями,
difference between the acceptance of the situation and the like instructions that Krishna has given to Arjuna. Where's this border? So yes, it all relates to dharma. That's a good question. So dharma means duty. Making decisions in this or that sphere, or I can give you like a piece of advice, even if I don't give you advice, but I have to preach. Can I even intrude these circumstances? This is all defined by my duties. What are my duties? If these are my duties, I have to do. So I have to use my will. If I'm a policeman or administrator, people accept it from me. They accept me to come and do something. Get rid of all these impurities and install another order. If there's like a thief, something, some irresponsible person, we call an administrator, and he makes things right. Others, they follow their own duties. So that's how you can catch this, face this border between. So we have to act accordingly to our duties. Everyone has his own instruction. Everyone has to follow this instruction without violating the law. So I just wanted to tell you a short episode in my life when I was experimenting. At some level, at some point, I've realized that I have a lot of regrets about what I have done. You know, you've done something, then you have this feeling of regret that you might have done something wrong. You've expressed some weakness. And then I thought to myself, when I have this situation again, I should act, not to have any remorses. Because at some point I've understood that this feeling of regret it's way more painful than the physical pain. You know, when you cut something in your body, get an injury. So this internal regret is a scary thing. So the next times when I had the same situations, I solved the situation in another way, and I had even more remorses, more regrets. And then when I started reading Srila Prabhupada's books associated with devotees, I've realized that if you don't want to regret something, you have to be followed by you have to be instructed by someone, by Krishna in this case. So I have to be led by a spiritual master, by devotees, by mentors. So you have to be friendly with the devotees. We have to be friends with them. If we want to act in the right way, everyone wants that. In the age of Kali, it is very easy to get confused. So the main criterion is to tell the truth in a friendly language. So this is truthfulness. Just be truthful. If someone doesn't agree, that's okay, that's his choice. You're perfect. You stay immaculate. You don't have to be bothered by people's choices. Like, you give them the truth, and it's their right to accept it or not. If someone tells me the truth about my making mistake, I have to accept it too. This is also the truth. You have to focus your attention on that as well. Because when people have arguments with each other, they renounce the arguments of each other, they denounce the arguments of each other. That's the mistake. They still argue with each other, rebuking each other. That's how dharma is really perverted, and everyone suffers. So when Shudra feels one truth, Vaishya feels it in another way, Kshatriya feels it his own way, and Brahman has got his own truth. But this is all truth. Understand it. This is all that we have to understand and hear. Not only that Brahman is right or Kshatriya. Everyone feels it really, and everyone really feels it. Everyone really understands it. This is all a part of the whole truth. And if we know how to unite this truth, this is the knowledge, the highest truth. That's when you become Brahman. And if you take just separate things, you're a communist. You just kill people that feel another way, and you only have workers. You exert some force. This is adharma. You exert some violence. This is adharma. That's why you have to be able to communicate. If someone tells me truth, that's his truth. I'll listen to him and accept him probably. So I have to first listen to his truth, not just denounce it, separate it. So Brahmins, they have to be able to do that. They have to be able to instill harmony in this world. People of different natures should live in harmony if they're with Krishna. So the truth is given in holy scriptures, and Satyam, the truth. If all these people, they have their own truth, if they accept the authority of Vedas, so Brahmins, they can explain them that, well, you're right, but probably it's not full yet. It's not a part of the global truth. No, this is the full truth. If they are engaged in service unto Krishna, this is enough. A simple worker is not supposed to be a scholar He's just supposed to be truthful, work for Krishna, and that's it, that's enough. This is his truth. This is a full, complete truth. We don't break his representations of life, his views on life. Vaishya also has his truth. He takes care of the prosperity of this civilization. This is also his truth. And becomes complete when he does it for Krishna. Not for himself, but for Krishna. When everyone does it just for the sake of themselves, this is adharma, this is not truth. So people feel truth. You just have to add the supreme truth. You just add it. Tie it up with their truth. Connect with their truth. All of them are right. Isn't it right to say that we have to work so that society prospers? They criticize corruption and stuff. You know, they say, you know, these wealthy people, they steal money for the work. Well, they're correct. They say that you have to be truthful, not only workers, but all the people have to be truthful and fair. Vaishya says that economics is very important because the civilization will not develop. And Kshatriya says that we have to organize not only economics, but the social problems should be solved in a society so that everyone is taken care of and we have to pay taxes. And he's also right? We don't denounce any of these things. It's just Brahman adds the sense to all of it, the final sense to all of these things. He does not remove it, he adds. He keeps what people already have. So that's how Krishna works. So that's when it's the truth.
Примананда Прабhu, пожалуйста. Еще вопрос?
Чакра Прабhu. Как понять слова из текста Srimad Bhagavatam?
So how to understand the words from Srimad Bhagavatam 1.2.17, the previous text? So if you listen and chant correctly, what does it mean to listen correctly? What's the qualification for listening and chanting? So modern scholars, scientists, so they have scrutinized listening of different levels. So listening on the lowest level, like ignoring, then you just do it to show off, and then could be attentive or selective, and then when you listen, being compassionate. So you have to listen to the whole scriptures with compassion, with faith, shraddha, faith. Without faith, it's impossible. Everything gets perverted. It will get a terrible shape. In the previous verse, it says that you have to listen with great faith, and you have to obey. You have to follow to what you listen to. Obey the instructions, follow the instructions. So maybe the last question for today? So there's, and then one more probably. So Bhagavatam says when Narada became a devotee by just serving two sages, but we don't know who these sages were. There's no description except for the fact that they were Vaishnavas. Yeah, you see there's some unfairity. There are no names of these sages in Bhagavatam. Matter of fact, the Vedic culture is like this. It's an anonymous culture. Just like Prabhupada said, remember? He said once to his disciple, I'm talking about Krishna, you talk about Krishna. Krishna is the same. That's what is important. Who says, who talks, who speaks, it doesn't matter. It's a second thing. That's the Vedic culture. Of course, there are some advanced, great devotees that are glorified for some purpose. So the glory of Prabhupada has been growing more and more. because more and more people that get this mercy from Prabhupada. But most of Vaishnavas, just look at Guru Parampara. 50 names and that's it. Of course, it's not just like that. There were thousands of them, millions of them. Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's some lists of some devotees, but it's impossible to list all of them. This book will be too voluminous. It doesn't make any sense. And then in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that many and many before you, Arjuna, had taken this path before you. So many Paramhamsas in the spiritual world, can you even list them? We will list the ones who've been glorified just for the sake of spreading the Krishna consciousness movement, just for this purpose. It just has just this purpose. Glorify the Vaishnavas that you know enough. So here in the 5th chapter, Narada Muni describes, doesn't list the names of the sages. So Narada Muni gives some signs of these Vedantists. So by judging by these signs, you can say something about the sages. He says, Vyasadeva, by associating with these sages, I could hear the stories about the attractive influence of Krishna. I was listening to them carefully, and each time I felt the urge to serve to Lord Krishna. So I have received this taste. And then Narada Muni says, a great sage, as soon as I felt this attraction, I started listening about Lord Krishna with such an optimism and devotionist. And not only because I was ignorant, I was identifying myself with this physical form. You see, this process is really powerful and it's quick enough. Katrin, your question? Hare Krishna once again. Short question. So what if I do not tell all the details to a person? Is it also a lie? It's just sometimes when I don't give this whole situation to a devotee, maybe I could just miss out on something and the interpretation would be wrong. So look, righteousness is described with the word satya. A lot of definitions actually exist. So the main meaning is the essence. Being righteous means to be essential, the essence. So the shlokas that were in Bhagavad Gita or Srimad Bhagavatam, these are the essence. There are no extra details, something that is not important. Then of course you can, if there's an essence, you can give more details, explain some subtleties. You will have no mistakes or understatement. The essence is the most important thing. So if you've given the essence in a righteous way, but without having given all the details, it's not bad. The main thing is the essence.
На этом, наверное, мы остановимся. Или еще один вопрос с YouTube ответим.
Там, наверное, много вопросов.
Да, там где-то 9 вопросов было.
Yeah, there are a lot of questions over there, but no. Well, let's postpone it until the next time. So thank you very much, everybody.
Shila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananda Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai, Nitai Gaura Premanande, Hari Hari Bol. Так, завтра у нас лекция.
So tomorrow
Неделя Шримад
we have
Бхагаватам.
a lecture, a week of Srimad Bhagavatam. It continues.
Наше поклонение, наше служение Бхагаватам
So our worship into Bhagavatam will be headed by His mercy
Браджендра Кумар Прабху.
Vrajendra Kumar Prabhu.
Харе Кришна. И тема
Hare Krishna. The topic will be
называется зрелый плод древознания, что-то такое.
mature fruit of a tree of knowledge, or something like that.
Харе
Srimad
Кришна, всем
Bhagavatam.
доброго дня.
Hare Krishna